Well, good morning, guys. This seems to be the way that things go with this old Jetta. I love this car. It is so much fun to drive, but I am tired of fixing leaks. I think I fixed that heater hose I don't know how many times. Last episode on the Jetta, you saw a to be continued because I forgot to hook up the heater hose. I'm not convinced that I forgot to plug it in, but I definitely forgot to put the clamp on it. So when I took the boy to school the next morning, by the time we got to school, about 8 miles, she was full on overheating. And I was like, something ain't right, because I know I just went through it. But when I got done filling up the coolant, there was an awfully big puddle on the ground. So we're sitting in the school parking lot. I pull some of the covers off. Sure enough, you can see that other heater hose just dangling. So, sitting in the school parking lot, I didn't want to film and risk having an issue with the school. So, I went back the next morning. We had a lot of stuff going on that night. Went back the next morning, got the heater hose fixed, got some coolant put in it. I drove the car several days, no more issues. Give it back to the daughter so that the daughter can drive. She's learned how to drive manual. She drives it, and now everywhere she goes, she's leaving a trail. Let me show you. So at this angle of the dangle, I don't know if you can tell, but right there, focus, there you go. Nice little line. Couple of drips of oil. Everywhere she goes, she's leaving drips of oil, right? So I'm like, okay, what could it be? I just replaced the crush washers. Look at this puddle. Is that crazy or what? That's like 2 days. Had her pull it in the driveway last night, just so I can see. See right there behind the tire? Freaking puddle. So the only things that are back there that I can think of are the turbo oil lines. So it could be leaking out the back of the block, and it could be leaking out of those crush washers again, or maybe it's leaking out of the hose. I don't know. But there's our beautiful red Jetta. We're gonna be under there. It's 6 o'clock in the morning. The sun's not even up yet, but we're gonna need it to take kids to school by 7:30. So you know what it is. Let's get to work. All right, I'm gonna put you guys down here so you can see this. Keep watching. Do you see that? It's literally dripping while I'm sitting here. That's not a good sign. That's really not a good sign. All right, let's keep after it. All right, guys. So my mic cut out doing voiceover. This is up underneath of the car. You can kind of see right there where the flashlight's shining. That's the turbo and the oil return line. We'll have to get up in there from this angle. I don't know if you can see that little drop of oil that's on there, but there's a little drop of oil on the feed line. Not so much on the return line, but I'm gonna get the Borescope up in there. We'll take a look, see if we can see any oil dripping out of any of them crush washers or oil coming out of any of them hoses. All right, Borescope footage. So this is top side of the turbo. This is the oil feed line. And you can see right there, kind of at the top of the turbo, it looks really dry. So I don't know that we're leaking oil out from up here, but if I give it a second, you'll see underneath of that banjo fitting, you can actually see both copper crush washers in place and crushed. So keep your eyes open for that. I know it's tough on a Borescope, but that thing's hard to control on the backside of the motor there. So I really don't think that that's it. All right, here we are, more Borescope footage. This is up underneath of the turbo. We got both of the returns right there, the one off the bottom of the turbo and then the one coming out the side. You can see that drop of oil there. That's since I've been up under here. And it looks like right there, that flange plate, that's all wet around there.
So I wiped away that oil before I went up and messed around with the other stuff. But you can see right there, there's all kinds of oil in that area. So maybe tighten up that flange a little bit. There's a gasket in there. And then here's the return line coming off the side of the turbo. Both of those copper crush washers are in place. Both of them are crushed. But it looks all wet up there. You can kind of see some oil around that. So maybe that's our leak. Maybe we tighten that up and see if we get a better seal. I don't know. We'll try it. We'll see what happens.
We can see that all the crush washers are in place. I went under there and I tightened everything up. The only thing that was kind of maybe a little bit loose is that large return fitting coming out of there. It looked like I was maybe getting the start of a drip coming out of there when the car was running, so that could be it. You just can't see it until the car gets, you know, decent oil pressure and gets up on boost. So it went maybe a quarter of a turn, and that was probably over tightening it just a little bit. So hopefully that fixes it.
All right, you guys, here we go. Take the little red Jetta for a ride and we'll see if we fix that oil leak. Off to the dealership to get a new gas cap. We're gonna merge onto the freeway here. See if you can hear the whoosh noises. Here we go. All right. Can't tell if that's from us or not.
One eternity later.
All right, guys, let the daughter take the car for a couple of days. We're still leaking oil, and it's bad. We gotta figure this out. It's killing me.
All right, you guys. So as you saw, still leaking. So I'm gonna pull the torque specs. I'm gonna retorque all those bolts. I got a new seal for the oil return line on the turbo. We're leaking oil so that we can narrow it down to just the oil fittings. Last guess is the feed line maybe is not torqued enough, and the return line maybe is not torqued enough because we're running 80 to 120 psi on the oil feed. So that's pretty high pressure. I would think similar to like an airline fitting, right? Those run at 100 psi, so we should have similar torque values. So I'm gonna double check. We'll go ahead and retorque all those fittings. I'm gonna put a new seal on the return just to make sure that that's not it. So fingers crossed, guys. We gotta find this leak and get it fixed. This is ridiculous. But other than that, this red Jetta is running awesome. Alright guys, I'll show you what I'm seeing down here. So there's our oil feed line. And if you can see, we're dry. There's no leaking oil anywhere around this top fitting. So man, was it a lot of work to get to this point, but it's clear to see that this isn't our leak. There's nothing coming from this. So I guess good news, but now we have to keep digging deeper. What's interesting is, since I've pulled it in, that's how much oil we've dropped. But now we'll put that back together. We know that's not our problem. At least there's that. Let's get to work. All right, guys, welcome to my little adventure. Okay, so you can see where we have a drop of oil. That fitting right back there is the oil returned to the block. You can also see that we've got oil splatter on everything in the area. Now, come to the other side of the drive shaft. Those are coolant returns to the block. We've got a drop of oil here. Oil all down the side of the block. Now I'm going to flip you over Don't get sick on me. Cross member has oil on it. This is where it keeps leaking out of to make the puddle on the ground. But you can also see everything all the way to the back of the car is covered in oil. Look at this right here.
Oh, I'm gonna throw up, dog. Man, that's disgusting.
Ridiculous. So we got crazy amounts of oil leaking out all over the suspension, all over everything right here. This is going to be terrible to clean up. So we've got just gobs and gobs of oil coming out. But it only does it when I'm not under here. So that being the oil return line right there, I think what I'm going to have to do, wait a minute. If that oil return line, I'm going to sneak you guys up in here. Nasty. If this is broken right here, and it's leaking right there, under pressure, would spray out, I would think that the higher up stuff, anything farther up the motor, would not have oil on it. But because we have oil all the way up there, leads me to believe it's that upper fitting. Okay, so I think what I'm gonna do, I got the new gasket for that. I'm gonna untorque that, pull that loose, put the new gasket in, tighten it back up to spec, and we'll go from there. It's not exactly a spot that I can get you guys video, so I guess you'll just have to catch up when we're done. It's time to get to work. All right, guys, so here's where we're at. Pulled this out all the way. And even, let me turn on the light. Okay, so all the way down here. These two bolts came out, no oil on them. These two bolts, when they came out, dripping in oil. Okay, and you can see those holes are bottomed out, so it's not like it's cutting through the side and there you got oil sneaking past and going up. You can see a little bit of residue on there where it's, I would not say rusty, but you can see some oil residue on there. So I'm going to get this cleaned up, get the new gasket in there, put a new gasket down here, and we'll see how it goes. As far as the hose, I made sure you can't install it backwards, and both of those faces, as you can see, are nice and smooth and shiny. So if we're having an issue with sealing, it's got to be that gasket. Oh, here we go again. Let's get to work. All right, so here's something interesting to note. Bottom one is the one that I got from the Volkswagen. Top one is the one that came with my gasket set. It appears that there is a coating on the gasket from the Volkswagen, and there is not on the other one. Could that be our issue? Just that tiny little bit of sealant? I don't know. Guess we'll find out. You guys will never believe this. I'm cleaning this thing up to put it back in there. At this angle of the dangle, you can see that line, can't you? Yeah, and that happens to perfectly match up with the shape of the gasket. I think whoever had this before us and tried to do the work before us didn't get that back in there right. I think this thing's been leaking all along. Because I know for a fact when I put it together, I'm careful enough that that gasket was lined up. So I'm going to get this flattened back out real quick, and yeah, let's get that back in there nice. So you may be asking yourself, if that other one was so messed up, how do we know this one's not?
don't know if I can get the light right for you guys, but you can definitely see that the machined face on this one doesn't have any mark off in it. So apparently the material of the turbo is much, much harder than the material of the hose, which from an engineering perspective, that's exactly what you'd want, because the turbo is the bigger, harder piece to replace. If you have an issue, you'd want it to be with the hose. So I guess that makes sense. Okay, let's get this thing back in there. All right, boys and girls. Let's see if I can get the light right on this. Lower side. Oh man, that focus is terrible. Okay. Bottom's in, top's in, everything's polished up. Looking good. Guess we'll top off the oil and see how she goes. All right, you hooligans. I think that took care of it. I'm going to get back after some of the other work. We got some other car stuff that needs to get done. Oil change on Daisy, etc., etc., etc. So, thanks for staying tuned in. Thanks for hanging out while we got that oil leak fixed. Don't forget, like, subscribe, share on your socials. Appreciate all y'all watching, and we'll see you soon. Get to work.